you know, and terrible things began to happen and have happened since because of this initial breach or divorce. So here we are today. What is behind this? What benefit can this be for you and me on a spiritual journey in the 21st century through hellish times? Well, for one thing, we need to remember that there's been no time in history that is without its trials, without its violence, without its challenges for the people of God. Anyone on a spiritual path is going to be, and I use this term lightly, tested. Whenever you make a decision to follow a path, then things begin to stand out in relief. If you never make any stand for anything, you're never really going to be tested by anything. There's not anything that's going to test your resolve and your commitment. There is something to be said for God's grace, yes, God's assistance, God's help, but the decision rests with you and me, the responsibility to accept the invitation to the kingdom of heaven, if you will, to the path of Christianity is mine and mine alone. I can't pass that buck to anyone. I can't blame my parents if they were not Christians or if they were not good role models. I can't blame the failure of the churches to deliver the message. You know, ultimately, it's my responsibility, and my responsibility to renew that commitment every day with every decision that I make. So there's that. The invitation comes. I have to accept the invitation, and then the journey really begins in earnest. And then there's the real parting of the way in my life. Yes or no. This goes with this journey, or this does not. This may be. The other thing is that behind this parable that is taken for granted, and you take this for granted too, even though you may not know that you do, this idea that there is a plan. Can you hear the capital P in my enunciation? Plan. In West Virginia, we add an extra syllable where there is none. Whereas in Boston, for example, they add consonants where there aren't any, particularly the letter R. When there are R's in their words, they don't say them. R is silent. But I digress. We believe that there's a plan. The people of the Bible in both covenants understand that there's a plan. There's the first covenant, which we're hearing about now in the readings from Exodus, and there's the second covenant that came with Jesus. The idea that there's a plan that things are unfolding as they should, that despite the rise and fall of empires and the persecution of God's people, Jewish, Christian, and other, sheep not of this fold, there is a plan overarching all of this, all of the details. Something is happening that means something. There's a progression. We believe that in history, that the kingdom is unfolding, not fully realized, that you and I are participants in that plan, and there is a parting of the way. Those who are for it, those who are against it. There are the children of light and the children of darkness. It is not my job, and Matthew's very clear about this. Over and over, Matthew says, don't separate the weeds from the wheat. Let God decide. Invite everybody to the wedding feast, good and bad, but get the dress code right. It's important. So, when you understand your life, do you ever feel like you have a destiny? Do you even use the word destiny in your reflections on your life at any stage? Probably more as young adults when you're trying to make a decision about a career, or in Montgomery County when you're trying to get into the best school you can so you can make, I don't know what, it really doesn't get past that. The dream doesn't really go past that a lot of the time. I know many stressed out teens, by the way, many stressed out teens. Too much homework, too many extracurricular activities, in some cases, tragically, living out the unfulfilled ambitions of their parents, but it has ever been thus, not just in the 21st century Montgomery County. But the idea is that there is a plan, there is a goal, there's a destination, and Episcopalians don't really talk that much like that. You know who talks about destiny a lot as Christians? Presbyterians. You know what? Let's go on a field trip some Sunday morning down to Gatesburg Presbyterian and just count how many times they talk about predestination and the elect. If they aren't, they're not fulfilling their identity as Presbyterians and as Calvinists, or at least Augustinians. But even those of us who don't believe that it's that rigid a plan that God has, that the details are not scripted, because you and I have to realize that there is more than one godly choice in our lives. Nonetheless, there's a choice that we must make. That there is a plan of salvation, or I like the term salvaging, rescuing, harvesting of the world. These are serious times, and they may or may not be the end times. It sure does seem like it, with the authoritarian rulers around the world, the threat of horrific violence, natural disasters. But we would not be the first generation of believers who thought that was the case. Even in your lifetimes and mine, we've seen many tragic examples of those who are ready for the mothership, and it was kind of tragically comic at the same time. But I think the thing we must realize is that there is a plan, that there is an unfolding of the universe at the cosmic level, and that we can't really grasp it all the time because we don't have the perspective. You know, the writers of the scriptures had some perspective. They saw empires rise and fall, and that the people of God lived among the ruins and the rise of secular powers and principalities. And we are taught again and again that we are not to put our trust in them. As individuals or as a collective, we are to put our trust in God. Whatever that means to you today, that may mean that you take the choice that is the godly one, and that you're going to live. That if you don't, you won't. You'll look like you live. I think that's why zombie apocalypses are so popular right now. Dead-eyed people who just won't die. They keep moving around, but there's nothing going on in there. It's a great metaphor for those of us who have not chosen the path of life and light. Because there is a choice involved. But it's not just one clearly defined, rigidly defined path. That would not be so godly. I love to think that God is ready to accept my initiative, my cooperation, my partnership in the unfolding plan for all of creation. Everything in me says that is what glorifies God. And that's one of the things that is meant by being created in the image of God, that I can create, I can respond to novel ways, that I'm not bound to the past, and yet I find meaning in it. So, on a daily basis, the decisions that we make, the smallest ones even, God is there. But sometimes there's more than one godly path forward. Presbyterians may not agree with me, but Episcopalians will. Amen.